You are now in Mexico, eh?
Yeah, San Miguel de Allende. This trip started in January. I left home, which is in New Zealand, in December. I flew to London to spend Christmas with my son, who lives there. And then I started cycling in January in Portugal and went from Portugal, Spain, Italy, Greece, Turkey, back to London for a couple of weeks, and then flew to Calgary in Canada. And then after a bit of tootling around in Canada, I headed south.
You went from Calgary, Alberta, Canada to Mexico by bike.
Yes.
You took this Great Divide. What was the...
Yeah, I did think about that, but my bike, I was on my own. I don't think it's a good idea to do a lot of that on your own because it's quite remote. And anyway, in the end, what I did was I cycled from Calgary up to Jasper through the Rockies, and then down to the Kettle Valley Rail Trail, and then sort of basically headed west to Vancouver, then up the Sunshine Coast, across to Vancouver Island, and then down to Victoria, and then got the boat from Victoria to sort of cycled around there, and then essentially south down the Pacific coast.
So you crossed the Chestnut Drive, Washington State, the Chestnut Drive. You remember that?
No, the boat was from Victoria to Port Angeles, and then I did the Olympic Discovery Trail, and then down the coast. And then actually I did a bit of a diversion inland to Central Oregon for a couple of weeks to see some people that I knew, and then sort of came back to the coast via what's it called? Ended up at Jedediah National Park, and via Crater Lake. That was where I came through.
Did you have another trip before, like experience traveling by bike?
Yeah, so the first time I did that was when I was about 21, so 30 odd years ago now. I did some bike touring back then, and then I've done sort of short trips since then. 3 years ago, I did a month-long trip in Finland with my son. But apart from that, yeah, I haven't done a lot. Certainly nothing as long as this.
This trip is how many kilometers do you reckon now you did?
So I've done about 14,000 kilometers this trip.
How was so far this trip? Like no problem at all?
No, I haven't really had any problems. The main challenges have been when I've tried to take public transport, which I don't do very often. But for example, in Spain, trying to get a train to avoid highway in a certain place. I mean, that was just challenging, and but I mean, nothing bad happened. It was just hard and made me realise actually I'd rather just cycle. But no, nothing bad has happened at all. Quite the opposite. I've come across so much kindness and such friendly people, generous people. It's been amazing.
You are in Mexico from when? Because you started in Portugal in January, you said. Now you are in Mexico, a couple of months, 1 month?
So I came across in September. So I think probably about 6 weeks I've been here now in Mexico. Yeah.
How is the situation in Mexico? You feel threat. You are aware of that Mexico is a little bit challenge for instance, roughly.
Well, I've heard that, and especially heard a lot about the dangers in Mexico, in the US. But, the reality is that once I crossed the border, we crossed at Tijuana. Once I crossed the border, I felt so much more relaxed, and I feel much safer in Mexico than I did in the US, particularly in California. I mean, that's the reality. I have never come across any situation in Mexico where I felt in the least bit unsafe or threatened. Quite the opposite. I mean, people are so kind and friendly, and, I'm not stupid. I do know that there's, drug wars and other things going on, and but that's just, bad things happen all over the world in every country, and it's just a matter of being sensible. But I personally have never come across any situation where I felt unsafe. In fact, I feel quite safe camping wild in Mexico, whereas in the US, I felt unsafe doing that. I wouldn't do it. So yeah.
How interesting is your mindset, because people actually always consider that those countries dangerous situation kind of perception, and now you say that you feel safe over there. So this is a message you send to people?
Yes, absolutely. I think you're right. I think it is about mindset. I think we all have our own fears, and for someone that has a strong fear of, I don't know, being in a situation where there's strong cultural differences, and that alters people's perceptions. I guess I don't have a fear of different cultures and different ways of life. I guess I'm happy and very comfortable to go with the flow, whatever the culture. But I think there's stories, that get out of control. I think, it's just different. It's just different, and people are afraid of difference, I guess. I don't know. I mean, that's just what I think. Maybe that's what happens.
This is what is interesting about cycling experience. When somebody cycling, it's like everything disappears.
Yeah.
Fear, preoccupation. It's like you living in the real time, the present. The present is the more important. If the present is okay, everything else, I don't know, it's amazing. Yeah. It's amazing.
Yeah, I think you're absolutely right. I think it's not that fear goes away completely. I think it changes. The kind of fears, it's uncomfortable not having an income. It's an uncomfortable situation when you actually don't know when you might be able to earn money again. And if I lost all my money for some reason, I do sort of think about that a little bit, although those kind of fears have certainly diminished over time. But then you get other kind of fears like where am I going to sleep tonight? Oh my goodness, I'm so far away from anywhere, or I can't find somewhere to camp. They're not major fears, but they sort of, they worry you on a day-to-day basis. Things like that, meeting new people. It's great. I love it. But it's not within your comfort zone all the time. Constantly outside your comfort zone, actually, when you're traveling and you're meeting new people, especially when you're on your own. So I wouldn't say there's no fear, but the fears are more about sort of day-to-day survival and life, and things that are sort of close to you, rather than fear of the future and fear of work stuff, and the stress of having to meet obligations. That's one of the things that has gone, and which I really am glad to have let go of. Because when I was working, I had constant, multiple obligations every day. Meeting deadlines, all that stuff. It's stressful. So the kind of stress, I would say there's not no stress when you're traveling. It's just, it's different, and it feels more healthy.
Basically, the concept of recycling actually is there, because you're recycling recycling the stress, you recycle the fear is still there, the stress is still there, and everything, but it's recycling. It's more natural. Is that what you want?
Yes. Exactly. It's more natural. It's more to do with day-to-day kind of survival and, essential needs, rather than perceived needs that we create in our complicated Western world.
What about the spiritual person you are building when you are on the road?
Yeah, I think that's a good question, because that's probably the biggest part of this trip. I mean, there's obviously physical and practical challenges, but the spiritual growth is probably the biggest the most prominent thing about this traveling, especially on your own, I think, or at least that's been my experience. So I have for a long time recognized the connection between emotions and well-being and health. And I guess, when you're challenged in a new place, when you're on your own, you've got to navigate new territory and new practicalities. It kind of, I don't know, for me anyway, it's thrown up sort of, fears and made me think about and reflect on, well, why is that hard for me? Why have I become stressed about this particular thing? That doesn't make sense, because there's always something going on inside that you perhaps have suppressed over years. So, and also, when you've got hours and hours on the bike on your own, you have a lot of time to think. I've taken the time to listen to podcasts and listen to audiobooks and also read, in the evenings. And I've been reading and listening to a lot of sort of, spiritual growth, self-help, kind of emotional health type material. And so, yeah, it's kind of helped me to heal a lot of sort of suppressed emotional stuff that I hadn't really given myself time to process previously, stuff from, childhood trauma, all that kind of stuff. It's a great opportunity for that if that's what you want to do, which I do, because you've got lots of time, really, lots of space. Yeah.
Lots of time plus the solitude and the silence.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. And I think if you don't want to sort of get in touch with your own, what's going on inside you, that solitude and silence is very, very challenging.
Follow your instincts like animal. The more animal you are, the more human being you are, actually.
Yeah, I think you're right, because we are so, as a whole, most of us human beings are so disconnected from the animal side of us, the instinctual side of us, what's real inside of us. And we create sort of barriers and disconnect. And so when you have that space and the silence, it's an opportunity to reconnect with yourself, which can be very challenging. Because we don't always like what we find. But, for me, I really want that opportunity to grow and to get more in touch with more connected with myself.
Can you accept other people cycling with you? Like adapt with other people eventually? Or you prefer not to share your space and your time with anybody else?
That's a really good question. When I first started, I would have said, no, I definitely don't want to cycle with anyone. But things have changed for me internally. And so when I got to sort of California, I started meeting up with more people and cycling, not necessarily all day with people, but meeting up with them at night. And then when I crossed into Mexico, there were 4 of us that decided to cross the border together. And I ended up staying with one of them and intermittently with 7 others, all through Baja. And that was very different for me. And I actually enjoyed it. I think what I recognized was I like both. I like being with other people and even sort of changing the way I cycle in order to be with people. I like that, but I also like my own company and to do my own thing. So I've decided that, a balance between the two is my preference. Yeah. If I have the choice, I like being with people some of the time. So, both.
What else you want to say for the global audience and for people that listen to you right now back in New Zealand or anywhere in the world?
Okay. Well, I guess it's just several people have said to me how my journey, especially as a solo woman, has been inspiring, and I know at least one person that has been inspired to actually go off traveling, not by bike, but when she was too afraid to do that. So I guess I'd just like to sort of say to people, you know, I'm doing this because I want to. It's a dream, you know. It's not without fears, as I've said, but I'd just like to encourage people to really recognize their dreams and you know that maybe it's possible to follow their dreams. And, you know, don't not do it just because it's uncomfortable, because the rewards are great.
Listen to this and other podcasts on Omarglobal Radio, omarglobal.com. From Quebec, Canada, Omar Diaz reported.